Hey Nathan, welcome back, brother.
Good afternoon, Johnny. How are you?
No, I'm splendid. I'm currently at home back in Northern Ireland and enjoying this really strange weather where like the sun is literally splitting the rocks, but it's also snowing at the same time. So I'm
That's
just
Northern Ireland.
yeah, I'm just sat here like really, really, but it was good. I went up Mount Slemish yesterday, and it was pure foggy. It's the first time I've been up there, and there's you literally can't see 10 feet in front of you. But hence, my mate
Mm.
photoshopped a nice little background that we were on, which it was pretty good.
It's a
It
good,
was, yeah,
good background.
100%. Oh yeah, I'm half convinced now to just buy Photoshop just for the possibilities now.
So
But sorry, go on.
the no, I was just to say. So the weather forecast here yesterday, it was like Saruman from the top of the tower declaring snow up and eternal damnations upon us all. And when I woke up and looked out the window this morning, um, it was the sun was shining and there was nothing. So who knows? Yeah,
I've given up trying to predict our weather. It's fine. It's look out the window and just dress accordingly. For the northerners, put your
yeah.
big coat on. For the southerners, stay inside. Right, we'll get stuck in today's topic. So, welcome
Yes,
back, folks.
please.
And we've got an interesting one today. It's going to essentially be talking about coming to the end of this very strange period that we're currently living in. So, the end is in sight, so to speak, of the pandemic. And it raises the question of once this is over, adjusting to life after a pandemic and certain things that are going to go with that. So, getting used to crowds again, social anxiety potentially for people.
Yeah, yeah.
Certainly for me, I love solitude. I do like being around my friends, but I do recharge being by myself. Whereas Nathan, I think you're opposite. You prefer the the company of others all the time, which is
Yeah,
good, which is what which is why people love being around you.
yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting one. I would say I'll give my thoughts on it very quickly. I think that it's going to be very, very strange in that, for 25, 26 years of my life, I've lived as we normally do, but this 2 year extreme, lockdown and
Mm.
things that are going on in the world, it does make you go, gosh, it's going to be weird going to the cinema and not worrying about catching some sort of disease or, just going and doing what you want when you want without the thought of, am I going to get a serious fine?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know what I mean? It's going to be very strange. I'm looking forward to it, I must admit. But something I would like to discuss later in the episode is, are there some things that are not worth going back to? Because I think that this pandemic has given everybody, society as a whole, I think, a potential reset, so to speak. I think it's helped us to really see what's important in life. And I
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
and don't get me wrong, it's horrific, the suffering that this pandemic has inflicted upon society and the world in general. But
Mm.
to look at it with a slightly silver lining, if that's possible, I think there's a lot of potential good that's come from this pandemic. A lot of people have suddenly quit their jobs and started chasing their passions and what things they want to do. Some people have
Yeah, yeah.
discovered passions that they didn't know that they would be
Mm.
interested in. And yeah, there's untold stories of kindness as well within this pandemic, which I
Yeah,
think has
yeah.
been really cool as well. But
Mm.
that's just my little 2 minute thoughts on my 2 minute thoughts on the pandemic in general. But what's your take on it, Nathan?
Yeah, I think that's all really good and interesting. Yeah, really like what you were saying there. I think there's, I think one of the things that's come out of this pandemic is has been a new um, hateful stream of buzzwords and buzz phrases
Oh,
that have
100%. It's just
that have
cringe.
that have flooded us. And what amazed me was how quickly people were using these phrases when I think that either they'd never used them before or so very few people had used them that they didn't really know. And all of a sudden everybody was using them. I remember when people were using words like bubble and shielding and stuff. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? And catchphrases like the new normal I think is
hate that one.
probably hateful phrase. And 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 so I think there's that kind of thing. And I think and the other one is government guidelines. Government guidelines.
Oh yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I'm all in favour as a former employee of the government. All in favour of government. I think it's great. I think that like it's been used as an excuse by some people to be a goon because they figured out where the exact limit of that thing is. And so they've, rather than going, oh, there's the line, what I'll do is I'll stay over here. They've gone, I'm going to go and stand on the line because I've not crossed it. And then for other people, like the enforcers of the line, for some people, they've gone, there's the line. I can see you stood in it. Please don't be an anus. But then for other enforcers of those things, they've gone in, whirling their truncheons and taking names. And so I think like and I don't just mean police officers. So like for example, at the church I go to, when we were last year, when the restrictions were lifted for a little bit, when Boris dangled freedom in front of us like like a strip of sirloin in front of a hungry dog, and we were allowed to go back to church, but you had to, if you wanted to go into the building, you had to book a seat a week in advance, and when you got to the building, you were kind of escorted to your seat, and you weren't allowed to move anywhere other than there until it was time to finish. And I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and we were having a conversation, and we were stood a safe distance away from each other, and we were both wearing face masks. And the enforcer of the COVID laws there just came up and absolutely was just so rude. I wanted to drop her, but apparently that's frowned upon in church, which is upset me no end. But we but she was like, these are the rules. How dare you? And we were like, we stood 2 meters apart and we're wearing face masks. Calm yourself. We just want to have a conversation. And so things like that, I think, like people have embraced the new normal. Oh, so hateful. And so I think, that those things there are, it is going to be nice to be able to actually meet someone where I don't have to go and walk halfway around West Yorkshire just to be able to see them. To actually be able to sit down and have a conversation with someone. Don't get me wrong, the going out and walking has been lovely, and all that kind of thing, and the challenge of finding a route that the rest of the county aren't using whilst you're out going for a walk. That's been fun. But I think but I just think this, as we're looking at like emerging from this, I think it was really important that you sort of, I know it's something that we've established over previous conversations, over previous podcasts, but that you and I, even if we were stood shoulder to shoulder, would be looking at a different world.
Yeah.
And I love that, and that's great. And and like what you said there, that you're kind of, for you, where you thrive or excel almost is in your own company, and you can chill and be more yourself there, whereas I thrive in other people's company, and I can be more myself there. And I think that as we're looking at this kind of, restrictions have been lifted, and this four nations approach is so flipping confusing, because it kind of feels like that if Boris Johnson says he's going to do A, then Wales, Scotland,
Jimmy Crankey's going to do the opposite just cause.
They're not going to do B, they're going to do Q. And it's the same in Wales, and it's the same in Northern Ireland. All these, and then at the same time, to top it all off, then like Europe are going to do something different, the US is going to do something different, and all these, you're like, oh, come off it, and so like even globally, countries aren't starting on we're not going on the same start line. We're all on different start lines. And I think it's the same for us as individuals. As these restrictions start to lift, there's going to be people who are going to be, and I've already seen it on social media, that they're like gasping for a pint or desperate to get to the hairdressers or barbers or wherever, and they're like a well, you know, because you are the proud owner of a large doggy.
Oh yes.
You know that when you take that dog out for a walk and it's on the lead and it's straining at the leash, it's straining at the leash. You know, and I think there are some people who are like that already. You know, they are straining, just waiting for that, you know, for that clip to be lifted, and they're going to leg it
Oh yeah.
off, you know, and they're going to savage the nearest bush just because they've been kept on for so long. You know, and you know, I got sent a wonderful little video of my nephew the other day, you know, having his first Easter egg hunt,
Oh
and
yes.
he was, one, desperate to get outside, and two, he wasn't going to wait till he'd found Easter egg number two. He found Easter egg number one, and his face was already covered in chocolate. You know, and I
Good
think, you know,
lad.
I think for some of us, that's what it's going to be like, isn't it? You know, we're gonna, you know, the restrictions going to be lifted, and it's like, well, I could wait, but I'm just going to go and cover my face in chocolate right away. But there'll be other people who won't have even left the house still,
Mm,
and who are still nervous or scared or whatever to leave.
yeah. Do you?
Um,
Sorry to interject. Do you think that
no,
there's
go for it.
a? Do you think that there will be a silent pandemic of social anxiety?
Oh, I mean, I think it's that's already started, doesn't it? And I feel that, like, there was, you know, it's kind of interesting. I think one of the good things that's come out of this pandemic is that there's a lot more people and high profile people as well, talking about mental illness and anxiety and those kinds of
Mm-hmm.
things. Um, and people who, it's quite amazing when you look at them, you know, or if you were to think about them, you'd think that these people have got, their lives are, you know, bob on.
Yeah. Instagram. Apply Instagram filter. Everything's perfect.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, like, but they're, yeah, and then, but they're not. Not everything's okay, and they but they're going out and they're talking about these things and bringing these things to the fore, and so I think that, like, if you were anxious because of the virus, if you were anxious because of all this kind of stuff, just because all of a sudden 30 million people have been injected, vaccinated,
Mm-hmm.
and because restrictions are being lifted, that anxiety isn't necessarily going to go away. And for some people, I think it will go through the roof.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think you're right.
It's
I think the pandemic of anxiety already existed. I think it's been exacerbated, and I think it's potentially going to get worse.
yeah. It's interesting. The reason I asked that is because I think it's worth discussing how to deal with it. I think that this is going back to the very start of the episode where I said that there are some things I don't think are worth returning to normal. I think, blind consumerism, this
Mm,
incessant need to put up a perfect life on the social media, the need to own the latest and greatest, and our addiction, and I use that word very seriously, our addiction to social media and the free
yeah,
dopamine hits in our phone. And
mm,
I think that
yeah,
this is, I think you were right. We already were an anxious people. Mental health, maybe wasn't as good as it could be, but at least you could get outside and in the sunlight and go on holiday and do all the things that I don't want to say, I don't like using the word cure, but at least took the edges off any social anxieties or
mm,
depression or whatever people would have. But then we're social creatures. Being locked up in your home is just simply not good for you. You know what I mean? There is, even before the pandemic, there was the epidemic of loneliness, especially amongst old people.
mm,
So I think it's worth exploring how do we emerge from this pandemic with a fresh set of ideas and perspectives so that we don't fall back straight into the old habits where our anxieties and depression and other mental health issues just get exacerbated even more. You know what I
mm,
mean? Because the world is changing whether you like it or not. More than likely you're not going to go into the office 5 days a week now. You might go in maybe once or twice, and you're not going to be able to do some of the things that you used to do. Now the world is going to return to some sense of normality, but my question at the bottom of all this rambling is, should it? Like, is there a better way to live? And I think there is. Like, I wouldn't describe myself as a full blown minimalist, and my family would tell you I'm 100% not, because the amount of junk that they had to move, for me when I wasn't here when they were moving house. But I really like the philosophy of it. The value in our lives isn't found in things, it's found in the people. It's found in the memories that we formed with those people. And it's it's something worth thinking about, because I think you've touched on it really well, that a lot of people, and I'll include myself in this, are are pulling at the leash, so to speak, desperate to get out there and just do something. Get
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
I love canoeing. I love getting out and doing weird and
Mm,
wonderful adventures. And the fact that I haven't been able to do that for 2 years, I'm itching to get out. But
mm.
I have to ask myself that, even though I'm itching to get out, how easy is it going to be for me to fall back into old habits that perhaps didn't serve me? So, what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think I think that like, one of the things we've learned, I think, over this last 12 months, maybe longer, is which people are really valuable to society. I thought it was hilarious when you had football players in the Premier League complaining about not being paid, when the groundskeepers of those football stadiums were on such a tiny fraction of that football player's wages,
Hmm.
were looking at getting made redundant.
Yeah.
And that one footballer on his wage could have kept all those people employed, um, and probably wouldn't have noticed much of a difference in his income.
Yeah.
Um, but then you've got I mean, obviously, like the NHS and health systems across the world. But just talking here locally for us in Britain, the NHS, striding around like knackered gods amongst us mere mortals. Those pictures of those healthcare. I don't know whether they were nurses or doctors, where they've been wearing the face masks for so long that
Yeah.
they had like abrasions and cuts from where the face masks were, and then people kicking off about having to wear it for a 10-minute bus journey. Things like that.
Yeah. It's perspective,
Um,
isn't it?
oh yeah, and then people who were, like teachers, supermarket employees, all those people who've had to keep on going. The police force, ambulance service, the fire brigade, all those people who've had to keep on going because other stuff hasn't stopped happening. Um, is unbelievable and amazing. I think that kind of view, that perspective on those people, and we've also seen sort of great like social changes. Like I think like like things like the Black Lives Matter movement. I mean, powerful and amazing. I went and joined one of the things when I was down in Portsmouth and just in, pardon me, in the Guildhall Square, and just stood because I am painfully white. I didn't, I didn't go down there and shout or anything like that. But I just went down there just to be there, just to say, look, yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. Um, for what difference that made, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? But like, I was, yeah, for this brief period of time, I'll stand here with you and just say, yeah, I agree. And we've seen some of these changes, and I think also there's been other things like um, like you're saying. I think like for some people who are office workers and things like that, yeah, okay, maybe that's going to change. But I think there's been people who are like factory workers who haven't been able to go to work, and who I think they're straining at the leash to go back to work. People in the tourism sector, people in the pubs and all that kind of stuff who work in those sectors, they're not they're not straining at the leash to go and enjoy themselves. They're straining at the leash to go and work
Yeah.
and to to earn their quids and to to live life again like that. Because I think for people who have been on furlough or who have just been made redundant because of this pandemic. I think that's been trying, and they want to go back to being able to work and get a job and contribute to society that way. And I think that, like, um so I think that, that's really important, that that it's not, when we're saying about these restrictions being lifted and stuff, it's not just about for hedonistic pleasure and
Yeah.
for for getting our rocks off. It's actually just for being able to go and be a functioning human again.
Yeah, well,
um
there's a whole culture, isn't there, built around the go to work hard, and you've got the drinks on Friday with the boys to look forward to, and then that kind of, there is a whole culture built around that in Britain, and 100%, like yourself, that bl- blokes especially need to feel like they're contributing, like they're actually providing value.
mm,
And then there's obviously the social aspect of it as well. Like I haven't seen the scientific paper, so don't crucify me over this apparent statistic, but a social study was done, and it was said that basically blokes need to spend at least 2 or 3 days or nights a week with their fellow peers in whatever capacity that may be, whether that's your own poker night, whether that's in the pub, whether that's doing something with your buddies as a sport or something. But I think that that's something that should be greatly encouraged, especially post pandemic. I think it's going to be so easy for people to be suddenly there's going to be a dichotomy of people, you know, pulling at the leash to get outside. And there's going to be people who now grown so accustomed to finishing their work in their home and just walking straight next door to the Xbox. And I'm not dissing Xbox. I love it as well. But something I've learned in this pandemic is to control it, because it can get out of control very quickly, and other things
mm.
that are important in your life can fall by the wayside.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think it would do us all a bit of good to have that social interaction that doesn't involve a screen. Like, I know for
Mm.
us, like you're in England, I'm in Northern Ireland. We kind of have to do this. Ideally, in a perfect world, we'd be face to face, but you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
but this is the difference. We're using this as a tool to
Mm,
provide value to people, hopefully, and to provide value to ourselves and to
mm.
learn and grow. But when this pandemic ends, it's going to be there's a very real risk, I think, of people getting so comfortable being locked up in their home. They haven't had a choice. They've had to get comfortable being locked up in their
Mm.
home, that suddenly the outside world can seem very scary, which I
Mhm.
think breeds the social anxiety, which then
Yeah,
means
yeah.
that they're not going to get out and be I don't want to say a functioning human being, but we're in our, even for an introvert like me, I still value human connection. I still value seeing my
Yeah, yeah.
friends.
Mm.
And I think that that's something we're going to have to be very careful about, and to encourage our friends. Something you said to me, before we hit record was, it's going to be different it's going to be a different response for different people. Some people
Mm.
like me are going to be like a greyhound out of the gate, straight out there, um but for others it's going to take longer. And I don't think we
Mm.
should I think that we definitely shouldn't shame people
No,
into it. It's kind of this,
definitely not.
you've been locked up for 2 years, and what, you don't want to go out for a drink with the boys. It's like, maybe I need some time, or there's just circumstances that for most of the time we just don't know. We don't
Mm.
know what goes on in our mates' heads
Mm.
most of the time, unless they vocalize it, which
Yeah.
we should 100% should do more of, guys. Just saying. But yeah, what's your take?
Yeah, I think there is that. We need to. Every single one of us needs to apply a bit of grace in our attitude. So if you are that introvert and you've got that extrovert friend who is, straining at the leash, desperate to get out, and he's on it. You come on, me up. Don't wall yourself off. Don't ignore them. Extend them some grace, because that's their personality. They want to be out there. If you are, like you said, that greyhound in the blocks, ready, waiting for that gate to open, and if it doesn't hurry up and open soon, you're just going to bite your way through it. Uh, and you're on it, your mate to come on, but that friend is not going to be that. Grace is a two-way street. um, extend that friendship, and recognize it. That just because it's something that you're desperate for doesn't mean it's something that your family member or friend or next door neighbor or whoever is desperate for. And work towards wherever this thing is, whether it's going to the cinema, going to the pub, going shopping, going, I don't know, going to get your haircut, wherever it is. Just recognize that we're going to get there differently, and also recognize that also from now on, the specter of this thing, and whether it's COVID-19, whether it's being tested, being vaccinated, being wherever, this thing is going to be hovering over us for a long time, and it's not going to be an easy cleanup operation, and there's probably going to be something else building up around the corner. Yay. And I think so, and not that I'm trying to be all like, the end is nigh and doomsayer or anything, but just being aware of the fact that we, like I was saying before we hit record, I had perfectly rational friends. They're still friends, but prior to this, who were, I would describe as being normal, and now have they have a bottle of sanitizer for each hand. They carry a pack of antibacterial wipes around with them, but they carry a pack of antibacterial wipes so they can wipe down the pack of antibacterial wipes before they take a wipe out of it. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you're like, firstly, it's a virus, not a bacteria. Secondly, what's wrong with you? But if that's what they need to get out of the house, if that's what they need to do that, I'm probably not going to give them a hard time about it.
Yeah.
On Friday, just gone, with a couple of friends from church, we went out and had a walk just around here, and the sun was shining. It was lovely, and we kept within the social distance rules and everything. But all four of us we're all people who are like you were saying, that kind of like, come on, I want to get out there, I want to be doing this. And all at sort of different stages in life and for different reasons, wanting to get out there. One of my friends is looking at moving house, and if restrictions lift, moving house would be, although it's still possible to do now, would be, I don't know, 40% easier.
Yeah.
Without the restrictions. Another one is having to do, he's looking for a new job, and having to do interviews over Zoom or Microsoft Teams, and it's just not fun. It's not the same as, because you don't get to read the person's body language, they don't get to read yours, and you're just kind of hoping that I mean, some of these things, like, because I've had a bunch of interviews, and some of the people don't even switch the camera on, so you have a whole interview with just a grey screen.
Yeah, it's not great.
That is just so, like why, what, that person might be off making a cup of tea, and I'm sat there, pouring my best achievements out, and they're off making I don't know. I can't see if they're there or not. And then there's other, the other guy, he's got, other stuff going on, and I know that, we're all in at different stages and different struggles of what's going on. And so I think just being kind to one another. There's a lot to be said for being kind to one another. And I think, like I was saying, if you've started something, like a few weeks ago, we talked about having a productive pandemic,
but not feeling guilty.
I think if you start, absolutely.
Yeah.
But if you started doing something, keep it going. If restrictions lift, don't stop going jogging, don't stop baking, don't stop painting, don't stop singing, don't stop trying to learn the guitar or wherever it is you've taken up. And also, like, this thing, I can't remember who it was now. There was he was on a talk show on TV, and he was saying about how him and his friends, they have the ask twice rule. So they ask, are you okay? And then they'll ask again. are you okay?
Yeah.
And so that, and it's kind of, they said amongst their friendship group, the first one, it was okay just to brush off. Yeah, I'm okay. The second one, you had to be honest. And I think that, like, soon we're going to be able to do that in person. It's not just not going to be a text. It's not going to be a video call or whatever. You're going to be able to do that in person. And so I think, that dealing with that, combating with that anxiety is, is just helping people to feel okay. And that it's okay if you haven't started jogging. It's okay if you haven't built or created the best sourdough culture in the West, and are now, and have figured out how to make sourdough croissants or whatever it is. I don't know. It's okay if you haven't done any of those things. Um, if all you've done literally is batten down the hatches and survive, that's okay.
100%.
That's okay. We're not here pointing a finger. I've had a 1/3 productive lockdown. You've had a 9/3 productive lockdown because you are now the proud owner of a podcast. And I think, there's we're all at different stages, and I just think that the best thing we can do is just be gracious to each other.
100%. Well said. A couple of things that I did want to say was, and the first one you touched on, being kind to each other. I think, and this is just something that I've found with my own character, and it is a bit of a flaw, and it's something I'm working on, and that is that I would describe it as my baseline. So like where I am on an average day, and what I mean that by that is like my general mood and stuff. So for example, when I'm at work, I'm normally pretty happy, normally pretty decent, and we were talking about this again prior to recording, but I don't have the best relationship with my grandmother's dog. I just don't like small dogs. I just don't. Like, give me a large dog any day of the week. And
Agreed.
and I have this really silly response where such a small animal can make me go from 0 to 100 rage in a split second. And I did have to catch myself on, with some reflection last night. I was like, why is this animal causing me so much angst? Why am I so angry at it? Like, don't get me wrong, it does decide to defecate wherever it so pleases, despite being 7 or 8 and knowing better. Um, it barks at anything, and even when it's in no position to do anything at all. Um, but it made me realize that within certain circumstances and within certain parameters, my baseline is I'm already at a state of certain anger or anxiety or whatever, and it's something as simple as a stupid little dog pushes me over the straw that breaks the camel's back,
Mm.
and I have this irrationally angry response at something no larger than a, well, it's just, I don't want to call it a rat, but it's this very, very small dog. It's very, very small, and it has this astute ability to be able to get in the way everywhere, like, specifically where your feet are, and nearly trip you up all the time. But on a serious note, it's kind of like I would say this is something I really wanted to challenge the audience on what is your baseline? Like, are you naturally angry, anxious, irritated? And if something's so simple in your day, is there something that's like making you snap instantly when a more rational response would be that person probably isn't trying to annoy me? Or am I genuinely getting angry or overreacting at something insignificant? Like, in the grand scheme of things here, am I losing my head at something ridiculous that in the grand scheme, no, it's not a big deal? So that's something I challenged myself on, and that's something I would challenge the audience on, to like, don't sit in your phone, sit in silence with your own thoughts and think genuinely, what is my baseline? Because I think within this pandemic, everybody's baseline has been moved up a notch to, with anxiety and,
Mm.
potential depression and things like that. So like things that wouldn't have bothered us before are now triggers, so to speak,
Mm.
and can easily make us snap and say things we regret and do things we regret.
Yeah.
And it's certainly challenging for me because I'm pretty chill dude, you know me, but I'm not a chill dude 100% of the time.
None
And
of
it
us
seems,
are, mate.
oh yeah, 100%, but it's kind of, I have to take ownership of that and recognize that for some reason I get uniquely wound up by small yappy dogs. That seems to be my kryptonite. That seems to be my, you can call me all sorts of names under the sun, say all nasty things. I'm not too fussed, mate. You do you. Stick a small dog in front of me, and suddenly I'm like, ah!
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that's a challenge. That's a challenge for the audience, and maybe even they can, say on the social media, how they're going to combat potential social anxiety when they do get back into crowds. Because if your
Yeah.
baseline is already, if you're already pretty angst up, and someone on a public transport or someone in public does something to you accidentally, or barges into you accidentally, or it's just something and you lose your head, that's going to unnecessarily escalate a situation. That's going to, cause unnecessary drama and angst. So, that's just when you were saying being kind to each other is definitely something I think that we need to really hone in on. Like, for me, I'm deliberately trying to be kinder to my granny's dog, as hard as it is to not yell at it.
Mm.
I'm trying to be kind to strangers who not that stranger didn't wake up in the morning and go, you know what, I really feel like I'm gonna annoy John today, or Johnny, or whatever. It's like it's they've probably had a bad day, or there's something bigger at large.
Mm.
So I would say that's something to take ownership of your emotions and don't let them take ownership of you.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think also something else that, I mean, that's really good, and I think we need to be aware of that. I think it's kind of like, the um that when you're at the gym and you're doing weights, you move the weights around your body, not your body around the weights. And I think it's,
I like
you know,
that.
you move the emotions around your body. You know, do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and I think, just in the same way as if you're taking charge of a free weight, take charge of your emotions, um, and to be, yeah, just aware, more aware of that. But I think one of the other things that's maybe going to be emerging from this is that as people have been spending more and more time, um, with that same small group of people, maybe you're not going out to work normally, you're not going out to socialize normally, so you've been at home with your family more, or you've been, or housemates, or whoever you're living with, and you've been spending more and more time with them. And so that one thing they did that annoyed you, you might only see it once a week, whereas now you've been seeing it
Oh
every
yeah.
day, 2 or 3 times a day, whoever, wherever, excuse me. And you've got, all these different things that would have been happening, and something that normally would not have annoyed you just because of this confined environment. Um, and so we're all going to be, I think we're all going to be emerging from this possibly a little bit more, tender as well,
Yeah.
because we've maybe been, uh, you know, um, emotionally, I'm speaking about, and hopefully not physically, but this is going to emerge. It's going to be awful, but we're all going to be emerging a bit more battered and bruised, than maybe we thought we should have done. Because, well, but I've been in lockdown with my family. This is great, but then, that thing that your partner does, or wherever, that was just something that was mildly convenient, is now, World War III territory.
Oh yeah.
Or whoever it is you've been confined with, if you like, and you're going to be emerging, and you probably might then suddenly, I can't remember. There's a name for it. Like if you buy a particular type of car, all of a sudden every single car you see in the street is
Yes.
that car.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it might be that this kind of behavioral trait that has really started to irritate you from your, whoever it is you're living with, because you're seeing it every day now rather than like once or twice a week because of life. You're probably going to start seeing it everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
as well. And so I think, I don't know, like, I think again, it's that kind of what you were saying about that kind of level of like irritation. You know, maybe before it was quite low, but now it's quite high because of what we've gone through. I think, you know, we've also potentially, like, you know, the safe environment that was our home has now become safe, but with hostility inside it. Um, and there might be people, you know, who are desperate to get out of that, so that they're no longer confined within that, so they can have those breaks. I don't know, you know. So I think there's a lot of things that when we stop and break down, and like I think what you gave that challenge out to the audience of, you know, how, to the listeners, how are you going to address that within yourself, but also then, you know, looking at it from that gracious and kind term, how are you going to address it amongst your friends, amongst your peers, to sort of go, look, you know, hey, you know, that thing you do, it's kind of annoying. Um,
Yeah.
and if someone says that to you, how are you going to react? Are you going to, how dare you? You know, do you know who I am?
Yeah.
Or are you going to go, oh, I didn't even know I did it, you know? And I don't know, because I don't have a practical solution to that, but I just think it's one of those things that's going to emerge out of this. Is that, you know, there are certain things I've noticed, you know, amongst some of my friends, you know, when they talk about their um, wives or husbands or whatever, and it's things probably they didn't even notice, but just because they've now both been working from home for the last 12 months, infuriated by it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, one of them is like, who has control of the Spotify account? And you
Oof,
know,
that is dangerous territory, isn't it?
yeah, oh yeah, yeah, and it's things like that, you know, that like, I can't believe they like this. You know, no one's going to want and sit and listen to Mongolian throat singing with me. I accept that. I know that's okay, and I'm at peace with that. And so it's that kind of, you know, what do you want to, you know, it's that, yeah, that there are going to be things that you know, that have come to the forefront that we never even realized were there, and that maybe we're looking to this release because it'll give more gap between seeing those things that annoy us as well. Um, you know, and then there are people who just enjoy being annoyed, who just enjoy being irritated by things,
Yeah.
you know,
Do
as
you think
well.
that?
So
Do you think? I think though with that there that's an unnecessary label. It's kind of like Faulty Towers. Was it Basil? I can't remember his last name, but
Basil Fawlty, in
oh, it
fact,
is
Fawlty
Basil
Towers.
Fawlty. Yeah, sorry. I've watched the episodes. I'm just not all that familiar with like the actual last name, but it's almost like, I think if you tell yourself you're an irritable old git, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh
Whereas
yeah.
whereas if you go, do you know what? That's not me. I can change, or you know, I can be genuinely nice. Like, it's as we were just saying, 9 times out of 10, I'm pretty chill. But I'm not chill 100% of the time, you know, and neither can you be. And I think it's okay to not shame yourself for failing, for being unreasonable from time to time. And what I mean by that is, that's not a green light to be unreasonable. That's
Yeah.
the human experience is, you're going to have good days and bad days, and even on your bad days, try to be kind to people. But
Yeah.
it's such a challenge in that, you know, it's life without a pandemic could occasionally be quite spicy, but with a pandemic, I think the problems are still there. But I think one good thing to come out of this pandemic is it's given people a sense of perspective, that they've recognized what's really important in life, who's important in life,
Mm.
and I think that in a weird way, it's been a bit of a filter. It's allowed people to, you know, get rid of the nonsense and the trash, and, you know, really solidify what they want out of life and who they value in life as well.
Mm.
And, you know, it's going to be very interesting when we emerge from this pandemic, how everybody's going to react. And I think there's going to be a lot of good, obviously, but I think one big thing we'll need to make sure is not to be that, like that child on Easter or Christmas, and you immediately stuff yourself with 3 or 4 selection boxes and immediately regret your
And then
decision.
puke up.
Oh yeah. Um Yeah, I think that that delayed gratification is going to have to come into play there if possible. Uh, but yeah, I think we're coming up on probably an hour now, and I just want to get some of your final thoughts on this, Nathan. And my question to you is, what do you feel is the biggest takeaway from this pandemic for you? Or, well, one lesson or a couple of lessons that you took away from it?
Oof, right. Well, okay. Lessons I've taken away from it. Um, I think the first lesson is that I'm not as patient as I thought I was.
Oh, I'm in the same boat there,
Um,
brother.
I would say um, that um, I don't. I would go and say like they're not massive in the grand scheme of things, but I've taken a couple of risks, and they haven't worked out yet. But I don't regret the risks I've taken
I really
um,
like that.
in
Yeah.
this pandemic. I think they, but then from planting a grain to it becoming a crop, there's a big space of time, isn't there? So I think that's why we have a springtime and a harvest. So I think the seed time and harvest, or what they call it in the old days. So I think that so I don't regret that yet. I feel like I'm in the right place, and the risks I've taken will work out. Um, so I think those are the things I think that um, I've given vent to some creativity that I'm going to keep on going with. Um, but yeah, I think like my final thoughts on this is just be, yeah, I've said it a lot, but just be kind to one another, and give everyone a bit more time to to get out there, and, don't and pick your litter up after you. Goodness me, I'm sick and fed up of seeing not news reports from parks and beauty spots where the hordes have descended and then just left their rubbish. Um, you know,
Yeah, that's not cool.
if we, if in the first parts of last year when this thing all started and there was all this talk about like nature coming back, let's not go and dump on it now. You know, um, tidy up after yourselves. That's my
Uh,
final thought. As we come out of this and we're allowed to hang out with each other again, don't be mucky, don't be messy.
yeah.
So,
Don't be a goon.
yeah, don't be a goon. It's a good phrase.
I like it. Um, so I would say the my last thoughts on this probably would be that the biggest takeaway is that living in the present. I find that it's too easy to wonder what ifs in the future and be anxious, and then looking back at the pandemic and thinking, I could have done this or I should have done that. Hindsight's 2020, isn't it?
Mm,
I think that I've certainly realized I'm just a lot happier living moment to moment. I obviously plan for the future, but those plans are quite adaptable and things like that. But enjoying the moment. There was a really good episode on my friend Colt Gordon's podcast where he had again a guest I've had on the show, Clint McInnes, and the name of the episode was it was something along the lines of nothing is permanent, or everything is temporary. That was it. Everything is temporary, which was really challenging because when I was listening to that, it was kind of like you've got to accept that the people you really value in your life will not be here forever. And it's kind of like this is, the things you enjoy will not be here forever. And I thought that's a bit morbid, but then when you think about it, it's actually forces you to enjoy living in the moment, because
yeah,
like
yeah,
what this conversation we're having now, while yes, it's recorded, we will never have this again. We
it's
it's
true.
this moment is lost forever, and even though we have a really nice record of it, it's going to be like every time I drink a pint with you or have a cup of tea with someone I love, it's kind of like, right, well, this is not permanent. This will end one day, which makes me think, do you know what? I'm gonna live in this moment right now and enjoy it. Not worry about the future. Not worry about the past. There's
Mm,
only this moment to enjoy, and you get it's a lot more of a wholesome feeling, and you get a vastly new perspective on life,
mm,
which it's been paid dividends definitely, and that's probably my biggest takeaway. Be present,
nice.
and nothing,
Mm,
there's nothing is, everything is temporary, including this pandemic and the
mm.
suffering you're potentially going through. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on that one.
I like it. It's good.
Indeed. Right, folks, that's gonna have to conclude this episode. We could talk all day, but me and Nathan also have lives outside of this podcast, believe it or not.
Not true. I don't have a life.
But yes, folks, my challenge to you is identify your baseline. Like, where are you?
Mm.
Are you currently anxious all the time? Are you pretty good? What's your triggers? You know, and how, you don't even have to share it with us, but identify within yourself where you could improve, whether that be taking up meditation, yoga, or any of these things. I highly all recommend them, by the way. But yeah, figure out your baseline and get it to where you want it to be. Take ownership of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's my challenge to you. Let us know how you get on. And
Cracking.
that is it for this week. Nathan, once again, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your opinions on these things.
Thank you for having me.
Right, folks. Until next time, I wish you all the best. And bye for now.
See you later.